This conversation, gender-based violence continues to destroy communities across South Africa, with growing concerns not only around the violence itself, but also the silence that it often is surrounded by. So in many cases, there are allegations that communities or those close to the accused may have known about the abuse, but failed to report it or take action. So tonight we unpack the culture of concealment around GBV and the circumstances that may enable abuse to continue. We're now joined by Dr. Shaheda Omar of the Teddy Bear Foundation on the line. Doc, thank you so much for your time on the program. So in many GBV cases, you hear of neighbors, relatives, friends, or even institutions that have the tendency of admitting that they have suspected that abuse was happening. Just this only happens after tragedy has struck. So why does silence so often prevails over intervention, even in communities that are fully aware of the danger signs?
So like you said, in many cases of child abuse, you refer to gender-based violence where children are often the soft targets. There are often people around the child who may suspect, witness, or even know that abuse is taking place, but yet remain silent. That silence is really simple. I think we need to understand that it is usually rooted in a complex web of fear, dependency, manipulation, trauma, and social pressures. As child protection practitioners, we have learned that silence around abuse is not always about indifference. It's not that people are indifferent or insensitive. Very often it reflects an environment of control and vulnerability in which families find themselves trapped. Now, one of the biggest reasons people keep quiet is fear. In many homes where abuse occurs, the perpetrator is not only violent towards the child, but also towards other family members. It could be the mother, grandparents, siblings, or relatives may fear, real physical harm. They would feel that their lives are in danger. There would be intimidation and even death if they speak out. So the modus operandi of perpetrators is using threats to maintain secrecy. They may threaten to hurt the child further, but even remove financial support where the family is dependent on the purse strings of that person. And families are afraid of endangering the lives of their loved ones or even themselves. But we have to realize that in this bleak economic climate, economic dependence also plays a major role. In many households, the alleged perpetrator may be the primary breadwinner. When families are already struggling to put a loaf of bread on the table, there's no food, there's no basic needs of food and shelter. Reporting abuse may feel like risking the life and survival of the entire household. No school fees, no clothing, so basic needs are compromised, and that may be one of the reasons that disclosures are not made and abuse is not reported. I think that is, but we also have to look at the dynamic of power relations within families and communities.
Yeah.
In the patriarchal community or society, we find that male heads of households hold authority and control, and women often feel powerless to challenge them.
Yeah, and I want to stay on the point that you make now, Doc, and I want to find out, is it really cut and dry? And how much of this culture of concealment is driven by fear? Because that was the point you were actually making. And I'm talking about, a fear of retaliation, a fear of perhaps breaking family ties, a fear of financial dependence that you so spoke about as well, or even mistrust in the criminal justice system's ability or its lack thereof to effectively protect victims.
Indeed, and I think if we just look at the criminal justice system, the lack of adequate resources, personnel, and access to timely responses, so not having sufficient resources, we find that the responses are not always favorable because of the lack of skills and training, and that could also deter people from coming forward because realizing when they've seen other cases have been failed by reporting, that would be another fear they would have, that they're not going to get any kind of support. So perpetrators continue to violate, and families continue to conceal because they feel trapped and they feel immobilized. They feel there's no escape from this painful setting or environment. And as was discussed, the fear of their lives, the fear of their children's lives and people close to them, and also the fear of being blamed, shamed, or ostracized if they actually disclose this or report this. So it's a lot about emotional manipulation as well, where the abusers create confusion within families. Outside or publicly, they are seen as respected, caring individuals, while privately in their homes, they're terrorizing those around them. So the concealment is because it could be attributed, a lot of it could be attributed to the fear and what we see and what we hear in the horrific abuse that takes place, where people realize that the reality is too painful to report.
Yeah, and how do we go about cultivating environments where we able to identify bad behavior but call it out as well? Because we often focus on perpetrators after a crime has occurred, but what are we doing really, or are we doing enough to identify and shame the entire ecosystem that enables abuse? I'm talking the people who minimize warning signs, the people who discourage reporting, or those that even pressure victims to remain silent.
So, as we speak, we know it's Child Protection Month, and it's not about child protection yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It's child protection all the time. So what this highlights is the urgent need for stronger community-based awareness. Firstly, a lot of awareness, but also with the awareness, holding people and systems accountable. I think holding government departments like social development, law enforcement like the Family Child and the FCS Child Protection Unit, holding the justice system where the punishments that are meted are consistent with the crime that is committed. And I think if we can, the theme for child protection is working together to break to protect children against violence. And I think that is what it is expected, that this collective action, but holding people accountable for their children, must take priority over protecting family reputations. And if we want to strengthen trust in the justice and child protection systems, we have to get people to report. Communities have lost confidence in reporting abuse because they fear authorities will not act, or because previous cases have dragged on without justice. So society must stop treating child protection as the responsibility of one person or one department. It's a collective accountability from families, schools, healthcare workers, faith leaders, police, social workers, neighbors, and communities. And I think when adults remain silent, children remain vulnerable. And in cases where abuse is not addressed or prevented, the consequences are devastating and irreversible.
All right, Doc, and this must be something that extends, beyond just a week or just a month, but must be efforts for 365 days a year. Thank you so much for your time and insights on the program. And that is Dr. Shaheda Omar from the Teddy Bear Foundation joining us there. Here's a quick break.